We are going to be discussing our top 5 favorite 49ers of all time. And then after we're done, we're going to be discussing top 5 favorite Raiders of all time. I just want to preface this by saying that we are not discussing who the best players are. We are merely discussing who our favorites are. And for me personally, I try to keep my favorites to people who I actually witnessed play. And so they had an impact on my fandom of the game and, players that I just love. So why don't you start us off, Mike? Why don't you kick us off with, who's your number 5? And we'll try to go through this quicker than we did, with the other top 5.
Yeah, for sure. My number 5, and I for both of these lists, it's like I kept going back and forth, and I'm still going back and forth on my Raiders list, but whatever. Number 5, Alex Smith.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I really came to appreciate him, and even as a fucking Chief, like I was just like, this dude really like turned it all the way around,
Oh yeah.
Because I
As soon as
remember
Harbaugh got in there, his career just like continued to go upward,
skyrocketed.
except for the Kaepernick year, and then he got released. Well, he got traded to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And
didn't
rest was history.
Didn't Mike Singletary bench Alex Smith for like Troy Smith?
Troy Smith, yeah.
Yeah, like it was getting so bad for Alex Smith that it was bona fide. Like he's a bust. Ex first overall pick. It's just not working out. He was making horrible play after horrible play. And then, like you said, Harbaugh comes in and just 180'd. And he just took off.
Yeah, it's crazy what a head coach can do when they actually believe in a player and tell him he's good instead of, breaking him down. And I looked into the camera because I'm talking to you, Kyle Shanahan. You know what you need to do.
Yeah, there's some fond memories with Alex Smith winning playoff games and, like the Saints game. That was one specifically with the rushing touchdown, right?
Yes. Can you tell the story of you watching the Saints game with your stepdad? No, you know what?
No, I'm not telling that story. It's funny, but it's it is funny, but I'm not telling it. Yeah, I was a kid, so fuck it, who cares?
Yeah. Long story short, Mike got put in his place by the fucking 49ers.
Yeah, well, okay. I'll sum it up by saying I went into the game rooting for the Niners because like my family was rooting for the Niners, and I mentioned something about the Niners defense, and something was said to me about how bad the Raiders defense was, and a switch flipped inside of me that said, well, now I'm rooting for the Saints. You're going to talk shit about the Raiders, fuck the Niners. And I started rooting for the Saints, and I got a little loud about it, So when the Saints got their, game-leading touchdown with like less than a minute left or whatever it was, I was like loud about it, like, oh, and like idiot middle school kid or whatever. And I thought the game was over. And then, of course, at the end, the Niners win it, and yeah, I looked stupid. So it was funny.
Real quick, I want to read this comment. It's very interesting. It's my uncle giving his perspective. So my uncle doesn't closely follow football. I'm sure that maybe he did at a certain point, but he said that Jim Plunkett was an awesome quarterback, but that was in the 80s. Plunkett was also a Raider quarterback, right?
Correct.
And he won Super Bowls, right?
He won 2 Super Bowls as the Raiders starting quarterback. He was drafted. I want to say he was drafted by the Patriots, like first overall. Then he went to the Niners. Then he went to the Raiders, which is funny because that's the same trajectory, other than the first overall pick, as Jimmy Garoppolo.
Also, I think Plunkett was in the 70s because in the 80s it was Joe Montana.
He was drafted in the 70s, but he won the Super Bowls in the 80s.
No, but I'm talking about his tenure with the 49ers.
Oh, yeah.
But so I guess if we're talking Raiders wise, that was definitely in the 80s, right? So
Yeah.
So,
but if he's talking Niners, then he's talking 70s.
Mhm.
Yeah, Jim Plunkett's interesting.
That is an interesting name. I wonder if he's on your list. No, I don't think he's on your list.
Yeah, my list.
Because you didn't really watch him.
Yeah, my list is exclusive to players that I've only seen as well. So yeah, I'd love to make a list of like actually breaking down who the best players of all time for these teams are, but it'd be better if like we had seen the players,
Yeah. So we're gonna get to the Raiders after we're done with our 49ers list.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't have much else to say with Alex Smith. I love his story, And then at the end with Washington with his leg, it was like insane and really sad. But then like the fact that he came out of it and actually played again, it was like this dude went through it all in his career,
Mm-hmm.
And like, when the Niners got Kaepernick and he started taking off, in place of Alex Smith because Smith was hurt, it was hard to say who should be the quarterback, but it was pretty clear it should have been Kaepernick. And then, of course, they trade Alex Smith, and he goes to the Chiefs, and what do? They fucking win. It's like, I don't know. Alex Smith is just interesting. And
they win games, but not a Super Bowl with Alex Smith. But Alex Smith would eventually become the bridge quarterback for Patrick Mahomes, who is arguably one of the best quarterbacks who's ever played in the NFL.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
but
I think that's when Alex Smith
like
was
5 years into his career, 7 years into his career.
Yeah, I want to say when Alex Smith was with the Chiefs, though, I want to say they were winning the division like every year. Could be wrong,
and then they couldn't get far in the playoffs.
No, I'm
they
forgetting.
blew it one time against the Colts.
I'm forgetting Peyton Manning on the Broncos.
What about him?
That was probably the same time.
Same time as what?
As Alex Smith on the Chiefs. So the Broncos were winning the division.
Oh. Yeah.
But anyway, they were still winners. You're making the playoffs, so forth. So give me your number 5 all-time Niner.
Mm-hmm. My number 5 all-time Niner is George Kittle. He was also on my other list for current favorite 49ers, and he was a little bit higher on that list. But in terms of like all-time, I'm just gonna say it again. I just love the way that he plays the game. He is definitely a guy who absolutely loves to block. Like, he doesn't look at it as a chore. You can see him having fun on the football field blocking. And as a former lineman, I really I really appreciate a guy who likes to do that. You know what I mean? Because there are definitely some diva tight ends that we've seen in the past who, they just want to catch the football and maybe they don't block as well. And, they don't give like the full effort that's needed. But George Kittle, it's almost like having an extra lineman. He also, he just plays like a wrestler, because he's a wrestling fan. And so he's pretty fun and funny at times. I know some people can find him kind of corny. To me, it's like hit or miss. Like there's some times where maybe he's like overdoing it a little bit, but I really just like, I enjoy having him on the football team. It's a pleasure to watch him. He's one of those players I think I'll miss when he's gone. He's the celebrity of the team. And, it's really fun to see what he does with the football in his hands. And I will always have that play against the Saints in my mind where it's 4th and 2, Jimmy Garoppolo drops back, throws the ball to George Kittle, and Kittle just like carries the entire Saints defense with him. It's like, it's just a great memory. I remember thinking like I was watching the game in my room and like after that happened, I don't know why, but I took my shirt off and I started yelling. So it just got me so pumped.
That's just what George Kittle makes people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You want my number 4?
I want your number 4.
I'm curious. I was going to say, I'm curious if this guy's on your list, but I just for some reason doubt it. Probably because I know at least 3 more of your guys on your list. My number 4 is honestly the guy I'm kind of most looking forward to talk about because, again, I don't think you're going to talk about him. Justin Smith.
I won't tell you if
Defensive
he's on my
tackle.
list or not. I know who you're
Okay.
talking about.
Okay. Yeah,
I love Justin Smith.
Justin Smith, dude, was a badass defensive tackle. Like, that's what I want for the Raiders at D tackle. Pair him up with Max Crosby. Just forget about it.
Justin Smith, I don't think he gets talked about enough.
No.
Everybody always talks about Aldon Smith, but Aldon Smith would not be the same pass rusher that he was if it were not for Justin Smith. They did a lot of stunts together. Justin Smith would just take on two guys and really free up the lanes for Aldon Smith. And I mean, Aldon Smith was great too. So, don't get me wrong about that. Aldon Smith was fantastic as well. But Justin Smith, man, I think they called him the Cowboy, or the Sheriff or something. That might have been Peyton Manning. But he was a grown man. He would manhandle offensive linemen.
Yeah. Excuse me. There you go. That it's just, well, I'm not trying to make this about the Raiders, but that's what I've been saying the Raiders need is a top tier defensive tackle because you have that to pair with Max Crosby and a Chandler Jones or Tyree Wilson. It's like having that defensive tackle who's like top 5 in the league, great pass rusher that can do stunts and like manhandle offensive linemen. Like that's so big for the defensive line. Like the Niners were the number 1 defense at the time. You had guys like fucking Aldon Smith breaking records. It's like that's what you need is a great defensive tackle, and Justin Smith was exactly that. And people forget that he was like, I would say, the best defensive tackle in football at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. We've also got another comment from my uncle. By the way, we really appreciate the comments.
Yeah.
For him, Ronnie Lott, one of the best safeties. Ronnie Lott was, in my opinion, probably the best safety of all time. Unfortunately, like you said in the previous comment, we're a little young, so it was before my time, before I could really watch him. But I've just heard stories that people would avoid the field, that side of the field with Ronnie Lott. Mm-hmm. He would put people in the hospital. I'd imagine.
From what it sounds like to me, Ronnie Lott was a step above, and this is crazy for me to say, for me, was a step above of Troy Polamalu. So
yes,
and
they're both Hall of Famers.
Yeah. So
like we're talking about, Hall of Fame is a tier, and then there's like greatest of all time. And I think Ronnie Lott is probably the greatest safety of all time.
Yeah. Yep.
So, were you done talking about Justin Smith?
Yeah, I want to hear number 4.
Yeah, I just want to say again, Justin Smith was a great pick by you. Thank you. There.
I would love to have put him higher, but these next 3, I have more emotions towards.
Mm-hmm. My number 4 is Vernon Davis. So, I really have a lot of fond memories of the Harbaugh era, and Vernon Davis was like the best vertical threat that we had. And, I just thought that he was such an explosive player, and he kind of showed me that like tight ends are, can be a very, very valuable, position on the team. Mm-hmm. And so it was almost having another receiver. And honestly, I think, Vernon Davis was just one of those guys I can look back on, and he's just like, he made big plays. He was like, really engaged with the team. I felt like he really cared. I don't think it was always like that with Vernon Davis, though. Not until Mike Singletary. I think Singletary had to humble him, at first, because I think before Mike Singletary, Vernon Davis was like all for himself. Yeah. But like after that, I felt like Vernon Davis started to be more of a, more with the team until they eventually traded him after, the Seahawks kind of dismantled the Niners, right?
They traded him?
Yeah,
To the
to the
Broncos, huh?
Broncos.
Yeah.
The Broncos, and he won a Super
Wow.
Bowl. So I was happy for Vernon Davis, you know what I mean? But yeah,
Damn, I
I
forgot
mean,
that. Yeah.
he just made big plays, you know, especially in the playoffs. You know, he had the catch against the Saints. Um, he had this long reception against the New York Giants. Um, he just made spectacular plays, and he was a very emotional player. Just
Yeah.
super fun to watch. It
The
was between him and Kittle for 4 and 5, but I chose to value Vernon Davis a little bit higher because of those playoff moments that I just remember.
yeah. The Giants and the Saints catches specifically, I remember to a T.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, the one where he almost stepped out of bounds, and then
Yeah. And then he ran through the end zone and jumped onto like the camera stand.
yes, and got a
And
15-yard penalty.
yeah, that was good. That was really
Yeah.
good. That shit was hype. That shit was
Yeah.
good.
He was like, flexing like that. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously,
He was
it was
cocky
a
as fuck, but it
15-yard
was good.
penalty. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
he could back it up with his play was the
Yeah.
thing. So like I really liked it. By the way, my
Yeah.
AirPods are
Going low.
going low. I'm gonna put one in to charge so that way.
Yeah, I'm curious where mine are at. Excuse me. Damn it. The last thing I'll say about Vernon Davis, my Uncle John is also a Niner fan, and he had this thing. Every time Vernon Davis would make a play, he would just go, Vernon Davis, like hella loud, like for everybody to hear. Like
Vernon Davis.
I think Vernon Davis was like his favorite player at the time. So like every time he make a play, he would just say his name like loud and like a little slow. Vernon Davis.
I think it also helped that, Alex Smith would throw a lot to the tight end, and then, Kaepernick kind of inherited that. So it was just like, kind of the top receiver, on the team.
Yeah.
So do you want to go ahead and share your number 3?
Yep. And I'm not going to talk too much about him because I already have. It's George Kittle. And you already have too. But I think, when you're looking for like an all around badass football player, George Kittle is one of those guys. I appreciate the fuck out of his play, but also like you pair his personality with it, and it's like, how can you not like Vernon Davis? How can you not like George Kittle? Yeah, I would kill to have a guy like him on the Raiders, and I hope Michael Mayer can become something similar to him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't expect the personality to come with it. So
yeah, I think Michael Mayer is going to be a good player for the Raiders, and like you said, I don't think he's going to have the personality, and maybe that might be a good thing. Maybe he'll be more focused and maybe surpass George Kittle one day. That might be tough for the Niner fans at home to hear, but I think Kittle takes his crap pretty seriously. And personally, I think in terms of all things considered, I think Kittle might be the best tight end in the NFL. It's hard to say because Travis Kelce is just a much better receiving weapon than Kittle, but they play in two completely different offenses. I prefer Andy Reid as a head coach over Kyle Shanahan. And
he's the best coach of football right now.
Easily. Yeah. Andy Reid just gets it. Like he gets the human aspect of it. It took him a very long time to win, but he traded up for his quarterback, and it has paid off for him. The way he is remembered now versus how he would have been remembered without a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's like he would have been the Charles Barkley of NFL coaches. But we're not talking about coaches right now. I'm going to go back to the whole tight end thing. I think Kittle overall, just his blocking ability just really puts him up there. He is a receiving weapon, and he definitely is worthy of your number 3 selection.
Yeah.
May I go on to
yours.
mine?
Yep.
I think you might be a little shocked by this. I'm going to go Nick Bosa for number 3. And it may be really soon. He's only been on the... Yeah.
No, like I don't mind the pick. I'm just confused now because there are 3 players that I'm thinking for your last 2 guys. So I'm curious who's left out. Continue.
Mhm.
I'll tell you after.
Well, yeah. So, like I said in the other video, Nick Bosa makes me really enjoy watching defense. I just love to see him get after it, dude. He just rushes the quarterback, like almost no other pass rushers that I can remember seeing. Alden Smith was kind of like that way. Justin Smith was like that way. Justin Smith, was like that. But Nick Bosa's coming off the edge, and also his term that he's on the Niners with. He's young. The Niners drafted him. It's just like amazing. He's relentless. He always comes in shape. He speaks his mind. He's absolutely built. And I had one of my notes here was he is one of the most built football players I've ever seen. Definitely in person. There are a couple other players that I've seen, like Eric Reed was definitely built. But in terms of not in person, Justin Smith and Nick Bosa are definitely two people who are absolutely built. But Nick Bosa's like his muscles are defined and everything. Not that really will always translate to the football field, but still, it's just like crazy when you consider everything he does on the football field. But yeah, man, like the reasons I said in the other video, he's just a pleasure to watch on the defensive side of the football.
100%. And he was on my top 5 current Niners list for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's my number 2, right?
Oh man, my girlfriend's giving hard eyes to Bosa, but not to me. You know what? It's okay. For Nick Bosa, it's okay. I'll let it slide just this one time.
Okay.
Just this once.
All right.
Because I'm over here hyping up his muscles. Yeah, only because I'm hyping up his muscles. But
Yeah.
if you're looking at any other time of the day, okay, can't do it.
Yeah.
His muscles are almost as big as mine. Also, my uncle says, great podcast, guys. Keep up the good work. Thank you. We really appreciate you checking it out and commenting. Honestly, it's great to be able to put the comments up on the screen.
This is fun. This is our
Yeah.
first time really getting a bunch of comments. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Everybody in the audience today, you guys have all been awesome. So we're gonna try to round out the podcast and yeah.
Yeah. So my number 2 all-time favorite 49er is Patrick Willis.
Patrick Willis, okay.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm at a loss for words. This dude's one of the greatest linebackers of all time.
I agree.
I will stick with that. That's another, point that I will have for a long time. Like when it comes to like Polamalu, like when somebody asks me who's one of the best, or give me like your top 3 linebackers you've ever seen, like Patrick Willis will be on that list.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't his career was too short. I understand why he retired. I get it. But the what do you call it? I just wish there was more, at the end, because when he retired, that offseason was crazy. When Harbaugh left and it was like everybody either retired or got cut. It was weird.
It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, it must have been tragic. But when he retired, it was like, no way. Like, are you kidding?
It felt too soon.
He was still at the top of his game.
I think he played for 8 seasons, and it was like, oh man, this is too soon. And then it's like, at least we have Chris Borland. And then Chris Borland said, yeah, I'm out too.
Yeah, I'm retiring after 1 season.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, maybe you have Patrick Willis on your list and you have a lot more to say, but I just one of the greatest linebackers of all time. Hard hitting. Like there's that one play where he tackled a Jets player and it looked like he just folded him in half.
Yeah.
It was not cool. Like in today's NFL, he would get kicked out possibly, but like I don't care. That shit was crazy.
Yes.
He was playing in the time of like Ray Lewis and stuff. It was like that was the time to be a linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Just an absolute badass.
That was the era of like badass linebackers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, is it my number 2 now?
Yes, sir.
My number 2 is Frank Gore. So I loved Frank Gore on the 49ers. He was like arguably one of my best my favorite players. There is another guy on this list who I will speak about next. But they didn't call him Frank the Tank for nothing. He would always, he would always fall forward, and he ran the football so hard, and he would find the smallest holes to really, break through. And he was so shifty. And, I think also he overcame so much in his career. I want to say when he was drafted, he tore,
both his knees.
Yeah,
right.
Both of his knees were torn
when coming out of college.
Coming out of college, and that to me is so tough. And then when you put together like a Hall of Fame career after that, but he didn't just battle that. Frank Gore suffered from severe dyslexia. Now, you knew about that, right?
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't want to say the wrong thing here. I don't know why I always thought maybe I heard something wrong. That's what I always thought it was.
That's what I always thought too.
That about him, but that's what I thought I heard.
That's what I thought I heard too. I thought Frank Gore had autism, and maybe he does, but like when I looked it up, I wanted to be prepared for the show and not just like spread misinformation.
Yeah.
But I looked it up, and they talk about his severe dyslexia, but he would put in extra work in school just to ensure that he would be able to play. And that to me is like super admirable and inspirational. And like, he is a no excuses guy. He played for 16 years in the NFL, and he put in the work just so he could be on the football field. That to me, I mean, it's absolutely humbling. It's like, there's no excuse why you can't do what you want to do. Frank Gore completely embodies that. He is going to be voted into the Hall of Fame. I want to say he's the number 3 rusher of all time. He protected the quarterback. He was all in all, everything that you wanted a football player to be and more. So it was an absolute joy to watch Frank Gore run, because towards the end of of his career, like or I guess middle end, because his career did like last for very long, but like at the end of his tenure with the 49ers, he didn't have the same burst that he had when he was younger. But he would still just like find an opening, and even if he couldn't take it all the way for a touchdown, he would have big runs. And he was behind a lot of terrible offensive lines with San Francisco. And considering that, and the fact that he's one of the top rushers of all time, I think it just adds on to there are no excuses. You know what I mean? He will find a way. What are you going to say?
Oh, I completely agree with everything you've said about Frank Gore. I'm just excited to talk about my number 1.
Okay. But yeah, I love Frank the Tank. I used him in Madden Arcade. I used him in Madden 13. Some of my favorite football games of all time. Not my very favorite, some. But yeah, no, I have a lot of fond memories of Frank Gore. You may now proceed with your number 1.
Who do you think my number 1 is?
Your number 1 favorite 49er of all time?
Because I'm pretty sure I know your number 1, but you might shock me.
Okay.
Which, if I know your number 1, then I'm going to be a little confused about something that I will talk about.
My number 1 is Trey. No, I'm just joking. Now that would be crazy. Who is your number? All right, let me really think. Is it from the Harbaugh era?
Yeah,
he's from the Harbaugh era. It's not Navarro Bowman, is it? No. Is it Joe Staley?
No, he's an honorable mention. You You want to hear it?
Don't tell me. Don't tell me. No, just kidding. Go ahead. Is it Michael Crabtree?
Vernon Davis.
Oh
No, I'm
my
just kidding.
god.
No. I'm just kidding. It's Frank Gore. Legitimately,
Oh,
it's Frank Gore.
okay.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Duh.
So, I mean, you've said
In the last
basically
show too, I
everything.
botched what your number one was. I botched it again today.
Yeah. What did you think my number one was last time?
Last time I said something stupid like, "Oh, is it Jimmy Garoppolo?" Or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So Alex Smith, Justin Smith, George Kittle, Patrick Willis, Frank Gore. Yeah, I'd say I double everything not double, but I repeat everything you said about Frank Gore. Just the fact that he lasted as long as he did in the NFL as a running back, like he even post Niners, which it felt like when he left the Niners, like we talked about Patrick Willis and Chris Borland and even guys like Luke Kuechly and stuff like retiring early. Like you think about the shelf life of a running back, it's like the fact that Frank Gore did what he did with the Niners and then left and still played for like 4 more years and ended up with what, like an 18-year season or 18-year career. It's unheard of, and it will never happen again at running back. Not the way that the running back position is nowadays with the NFL. It's not happening again, period.
Not like that, at least.
Not like that, but like even if a running back lasted that long, they wouldn't start for as long as he did. They wouldn't get the numbers that he did. And that's why he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He probably won't be, but he should be.
He definitely
And
should be.
he should be. And I like you said about his like personality and like just always fighting and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I don't know how you can't like the guy, appreciate him as a player and everything,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's my number one Niner of all time.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to I'm just gonna say it. My number one favorite 49er of all time is Colin Kaepernick. Now, he might not be as likable as Frank Gore was, but I would argue nobody is. But when I first, started, watching the 49ers, it was Alex Smith's team. I was an Alex Smith guy. I thought Alex Smith, when he got injured, I thought he should regain control of the team after he was cleared, from his injury. However, Kaepernick really took the job, and Harbaugh never looked back. You know what I mean? It was such a crazy time. He added a dynamic to the offense that it just didn't have. Just having the quarterback be able to run the football. It was something that, like, oh man, like I had never seen on the 49ers before. But that's because I'm too young. Steve Young, obviously was a good runner of the football. But just seeing Kaepernick and having the whole Alex Smith versus versus Kaepernick was like the next Montana and Young, for my generation, right? People were kind of divided on it, but Kaepernick took over playoff games. When he did what he did to the Packers, it was like there's no looking back at all. Like, he set the single game record for rushing, for a quarterback, right? And I became obsessed with him after that. He was like the wallpaper on my iPod Touch, and he was like the first NFL player that I really paid attention to, like, in their career.
Mm.
Like, I just really loved watching him, and I really thought that he would eventually bring a Super Bowl to the 49ers. And, even as recent as a couple of years ago, remember we did that Madden franchise and I put Kaepernick back on the team. And, I loved watching him play. It was just so fun. And since I've been watching football, he's the closest thing that the 49ers, I mean, even still to this day, Kaepernick is the closest thing the Niners have had to an elite quarterback. I'm not saying that when Kaepernick was running the team, that was the most prolific offense. I think Brock Purdy was running a more efficient offense towards the end of this past season than we've ever seen. But the quality of play from the quarterback position that we got from Kaepernick, even in playoffs, and he was a dynamic playmaker. He ultimately wasn't as good, as he was in the Harbaugh days, but the team also fell apart around him, and he didn't really have much talent. He didn't have that much talent around him, like towards the end of his career. And you can say what you want about like the political stance that he took, but I really admire that he was passionate enough about like what he believed in, that he sacrificed his career for it. And I think it was a noble cause. But in terms of football, I think football sort of became secondary to him. And I think part of that makes me like him more, because like I've heard that he was an asshole, like kind of behind the scenes, but like I think he began to stand for like something greater. I feel like it was bigger than football. But like those years where Harbaugh was there and Kaepernick was there, it was just I already am glued to my TV, for the 49ers, but like I was just obsessed with this player. So that's why he's my favorite.
Yeah. I already knew it.
Yeah. So you were going to ask me about Patrick Willis, why Patrick Willis was not on my list.
Correct.
And so the reason why Patrick Willis wasn't on my list is because I feel like I didn't watch enough of Patrick Willis's prime, or his best years. Because I'm like, man, I really like Patrick Willis. And then I was like, all right, I want to put him on my favorites list. But then, I just kind of come to the conclusion, like, why would I put him above this person? Why would I put him above, like George Kittle or Vernon Davis? And it's like, I think I had better memories of those players. And like, I've watched them play more football, because I don't know if you remember, but like, Patrick Willis, obviously, I think he retired 2014 or I don't even think he played in 2014, and then he retired. And I don't think I began like actually watching until 2011 or 2012. I want to say it was 2012. You know what I mean? So I only really got like two years out of him in terms of like mileage to really watch him play. And I will argue that he is one of the best linebackers of all time. There's no question about that. He, I've seen his highlights and everything, but in terms of like in the moment, I feel like in the moment, the other players just had a little bit more of an impact on me than Patrick Willis did. But that's no disrespect to Patrick Willis. He is forever cemented in the 49ers legacy. He was a premier athlete, everything.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So you have nothing else that you want to say about honorable mentions or nothing, or you want to just jump straight into the Raiders?
My honorable mentions are legitimately Vernon Davis, Alden Smith, or sorry, Joe Staley, and then Alden Smith. And Alden Smith just on the sense of how dominant he was and just like how crazy it was to watch him. Like Alden Smith is one of the craziest stories ever, but high draft pick, just immediately like just takes over as like one of the best pass rushers in football. And then like that same offseason when everything went to shit for the Niners, I think he might have got cut or whatever because he was going through shit or whatever happened. and then he ends up, or maybe he went. I don't know what happened to him. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I know he had problems outside of the football field. So yeah, the way that his career ended out was just insane because he would have been a day one Hall of Famer if he kept it up.
Patrick Willis,
Alden Smith.
Alden Smith.
Yeah. But yeah, those are my three: Vernon Davis, Joe Staley, Alden Smith. I guess you could add like Christian McCaffrey because I love him as a player, but
Mhm.
he's only been a Niner for half a season, so I can't really put him on here.
Yeah, I mean, for my honorable mentions, I said Patrick Willis, Joe Staley is definitely on there. I would like to add Justin Smith to it. I will go ahead and am I gonna add him? I'm gonna go ahead and add Jimmy Garoppolo on there.
You were a massive fan of Jimmy Garoppolo post Kaepernick.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it had to do with the fact that like he kind of restored the faith that I had in the franchise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's, if I think of any others, I guess I'll say it later. You know what I mean? I loved a lot of Niners in my day.
Yeah.
So